Well, welcome into the Illini Inquirer Podcast. Jeremy Warner, Joey Wagner, and we had a day today, like a normal day. We were both in Champaign. We covered a little football camp. We met in person with some of the staff members there, unmasked because we're all vaccinated. And then we went to a room with 20 other media members like we normally do for our job. And we asked questions of somebody in Illinois, and it just so happened to be the top dog in Illinois athletics director Josh Whitman had his media roundtable today. But Joey, it was nice to see everybody in person. All of us had to be vaccinated to be in that room without a mask, and everybody was without a mask that was in that room. So man, it was nice to see everybody, to catch up, and to get a lot of information from Josh Whitman, as we always do. He had an hour long, I think you had it 58 minutes opening statement, which Kent Brown did warn us, the head of communications at Illinois, that it could be long, but it was very informative, and we have so much to break down. But man, today felt good, man, just to get back into the grind of covering Illinois athletics.
Dude, I was driving home, which is a much shorter drive now, which is awesome. But sorry to rub that in your face. I know that's shorter for one of us. And I'm like, okay, I've got this, and this. I'm like, holy crap, it feels good. For me, the car is that space where I'm like, I process it, whether you write a lead in your head or you kind of break down everything. And we haven't had that like car time. I mean, maybe a little bit coming back from games, basketball, football games, but it was just felt normal to be on a field to see. We've talked about this at length. I mean, we saw people walk by and I had to be like, Jeremy, who was that? I've only known them in a screen or a Twitter picture, and it's man, it just felt so good.
Yeah, somebody asked me today from the Illinois football staff, they're like, how often do you make the drive down? Because it's about an hour, 15 minutes for me down to Champaign. And I was like, well, the last year, it hasn't been very much, but I'm looking forward to making that drive a lot more. And we'll head down there on Thursday as well. We're getting kind of a mini recruiting visit tour. Pat Embleton and Brett Bielema and his staff are going to take us through like a mock recruiting visit, which is really smart of them, right? Just PR wise, they are going to milk everything for this honeymoon. They're recruiting well, and it'll be good publicity for them. And we'll get to take fans maybe in a little bit of what we get to see, and they get that kind of outreach. So really smart with them. But Joey, we have so much to dive into with Josh Whitman, but I felt like he was talking directly to us with the most important news of the day. Okay. I felt he was talking directly to us, telling us, hey guys, tell everybody about this third Illinois basketball assistant. We're going to be okay. He actually used the Aaron Rodgers, just relax. He didn't spell it out. I wish he would have, but he did say relax about the third assistant. It's like he reached into the premium board at Illini Inquirer. Maybe he's read it and said, they're on page 387 or whatever. I barely hop on there anymore. I just kind of laugh at everybody freaking out about this. But Josh basically said it's a timing issue. It sounds like they have their guy, but there's a delay for some reason. Maybe it's the NBA, and maybe it is Brian Randall or somebody like that, or maybe it's somebody that's dealing with people at the NBA draft. I don't know, but he said it's just a timing issue. And boy, he seems very confident that everything is going to plan. It doesn't seem like it's a scramble. So take it for what it's worth, but I tend to believe Josh Whitman. He's pretty credible with these things.
Yeah, I do too. I also didn't think, because I wondered how that was going to be brought up, and 58-minute opening speech, I guess. I knew it was going to be covered in there. Like, I didn't think this was going to be something we had to be like, hey, Josh, I don't know if you've heard, there is a vacancy. So I wondered how it was going to be done. And then he started getting into basketball, and it was like, okay, the season was this, that, and the other, and it was great. And I'm happy with Brad, and we're going to miss these guys, and Chester's good, and I'm excited. I'm like, okay, we're getting closer. So he's either going to just stop and not address this, or he's going to address it, and he did. And I will say, Jeremy, I didn't expect him to go in there and be like, don't know what's happening. I don't know. But I think it's to the point, and we've talked about this in maybe a little more nuanced way than some other conversations have happened around people who follow Illinois athletics. This has taken a while, right? I mean, just objectively, by any measure you look at this, it's taken a while. So I think at some point, if this in-person roundtable would have been a month ago, I don't know that there's a lot of need to really to say anything, but because it's now, a month and a half, 2 months after, kind of this reshuffling, I thought it was something that he had to bring up, and he
Yeah.
did, and we'll see. And you're right. I definitely think they've got their guy, or maybe they're working out between a couple, but it doesn't sound like they are at the beginning of this search, right? And I would certainly hope not at this point in the calendar, but
And to be honest, I can't blame some Illini fans for hand wringing because we don't have a lot of information and we're a conduit to them. And so we can't tell them, hey, it's going to be fine. Okay. Like, but Josh Whitman coming out and doing that, maybe it's something Brad Underwood should have just done 2 weeks ago and say, guys, it's going to be okay. It's going to take some time though. Okay. It's all going to work out. Don't worry about it. Trust me. We're going to find somebody, or, things are lining up for it. Just to say, guys, we got a guy. It's just he's got some other gig he needs to do right now. So, I mean, it doesn't make a lot of sense unless you feel really good or you feel like you already have your person to go into June recruiting without a third assistant, right? Like, so there has to be a logical explanation. And Josh Whitman seemed to say today, there's certainly a logical explanation. But the quote was so great. He said, I just encourage people to let it go. We're going to be fine. And it really is more about timing than anybody else. But he basically said, tell them, like he tell them, I just encourage people to let it go. Like it's going to be okay, guys.
I almost wanted to slide my laptop over and let him just post in the premium board like a message from Josh. Yeah, man. I thought it had to be done, but
I think Brad could have helped himself just by saying it, like whether it's
I think Brad could have
whatever.
helped himself in a few ways, right? I mean, I think Brad has really, and look, I'm sure he's pumped about whoever. If he's got somebody, obviously he would have to be pumped about them to bring them a part of this. But I think if it's going to take a little bit, and maybe, to be fair, maybe he did not know that when we spoke, when they promoted Jeff. But I think there could have been a little more breaks involved in this before. But hey, here it is.
Well, he must be very confident in this person to wait, right? Like whoever this is, he must feel really, really good. Because I mean, did he know when he talked to us a month ago or whatever it was, a couple of weeks ago, when he said, "You guys like minds would literally be blown," which I hope not, because that would literally hurt a lot and people would be sad about it. So like, yeah, I don't know if that's the same person. Like if he got one of those people, I will tell you, an NBA assistant, no matter who it is, would blow my mind, right? Because we've talked about it before, an NBA assistant. To go to the college game willingly, recruit, all of that. I think it'd blow my mind, to be honest with you. Now, whether they're the best fit, whether it's the next great recruiter, I don't know, or whether it's some person that's been a college recruiter who's proven, we'll see. But we're going to have to wait. We're going to have to wait a little bit longer, but at least now we know we can relax, according to Josh Whitman. All right, let's get into the bigger topics of the day. We got to address hockey. We got to address basketball. We got to address football and what he's seen there. We got to address huge changes in the NCAA and Josh Whitman's take on that, and Josh Whitman's big stance on gambling as well. So let's get into all of that. But the number one topic I thought today, the most important topic that I wanted to learn about, Joey, was COVID and the impact on the program. And Josh was very forthright statistically and giving us the information that we all wanted and that I think everybody needed to hear, that is fans of this program. And just to go into the number one thing is the health and safety of the program. 105,000 tests they ran in the Division of Intercollegiate Athletics, which is amazing. 175 positive tests. That's 122 for student athletes, 53 for staff members. They had 350 stints in quarantine due to contact tracing, but they had 0 hospitalizations, 0 illnesses, 0 cases of myocarditis, which is great news. I think it's also not surprising news that, young people, right, who are athletes did not have serious cases of this, but I also think it's a great sign that there was only 175 positive cases in the entire program, with how many people, hundreds and maybe even 1,000 people in that intercollegiate athletics department. That's pretty good. And they had no athletic events canceled due to COVID. And I thought some of the most important numbers he shared today were the vaccination numbers. 75% of Illini student athletes have at least been partially vaccinated. 68% are fully vaccinated. 90% of Illini staff members are fully vaccinated. So that'll go a long way to stop the spread going into the next season. And there's a lot of incentive. Josh Whitman said he's not going to require, but he's expecting all students to get vaccinated. I know some people might be upset with that, but I think that's the right call for an athletic director. But that whoever is not vaccinated will have to go through the same protocols. So they'll have to be masked. They'll have to be socially distanced. They'll have to take tests almost daily. So pretty strong reason to go through with a vaccination. And if you don't, you just got to deal with the things you have to go through all the last year. So I thought those were interesting numbers. And that's what they lived for the last year, right?
Yeah. So let's dive into the 175 positive tests. I'm only doing that because there's the 350 stints in quarantine. Josh roundabout circled that a little bit back to the SHIELD program and the campus testing that they had, not they, I mean, no one in the athletic department did, but the university had created. And he said, look, in some cases, what we now know as part of our daily vocabulary, the viral load was not high enough basically to be contagious. So could that have looked different, right? If it's just a Big Ten antigen, and we've seen this, throughout other programs within the conference, does that maybe look different? I don't know. I mean, it's just, people are like, oh my God, they got to get tested every day. And what? Well, this more or less is why, right?
Yeah.
175 gets different.
Just to refresh people, that saliva test would detect any kind of COVID in you about 2 days to 3 days before the antigen test. And usually if you test positive for the antigen test, which is just how they get it, how the scientists and experiments go through this. But if you tested positive for the antigen test, you were probably contagious already. If you tested positive for the saliva test right then, if you're doing it daily, you probably weren't contagious. So they were able to quarantine those people, get them away from people. So it really stopped the spread compared to what you saw with Michigan or Minnesota, right?
And if I remember right, Brandon Peters was a positive on the saliva. And I do not believe he ever was an antigen positive, which again, and look, we just don't know what it would have been, but this is why these measures were in place. And it's easy for me to sit in a chair who wasn't tested daily at 5 o'clock every morning after, in the case of basketball, late games or whatever the case may be. But as you start to get some numbers and some real life understanding of what this could have been, that's why. And it all makes sense. And the vaccination was interesting. I did not expect, frankly, for Josh to share the percentage numbers today. We're not early, I wouldn't say, in the vaccination process, but it's still fairly, I would say early middle in terms of when this became available really to everybody. So I didn't think he would share that, but those are pretty good numbers. I mean, let's be honest, and you don't have to make anybody do this. And again, they will not, but it's what you said. It's what Josh said. Do you want to be the 5 a.m. daily testing group? Do you want to wear a mask and sit away from people? And some people are going to say, bring it on. I'm here for that. And that's whatever. But he said it, I think he expects, just not even in terms of like, when a parent comes down and said, I expect this. I just think he expects in terms of just understanding how people operate, that number will increase by the time the fall seasons really, really get going. So that was really interesting. The 90% of staff members fully vaccinated. That, if I remember correctly, I think Brett said his staff was 100%. His football coaching staff was 100%.
Which he did not say in the spring, right? Like he didn't. He said, right. Yeah, we don't have our full. Yeah, he said we don't have our full staff vaccinated yet. And then recently, last week, he said our full staff, he believes, is vaccinated. So I think having to show up every day, for that, rather than maybe one bad day like we had, it is worth it. All right. I thought the biggest question I had, and I was kind of bracing myself for the number, right? Of, okay, there was a health and safety, then there was a financial impact of this. We had to balance all of that out, right? Everybody in the country dealt with that. It's no different than the athletics department. And Whitman said the number he thought that, or estimates that they will lose, a net loss this year, is $12 to $18 million. I got to be honest with you, Joey, I was bracing for a bigger number than that. Not that is chicken scratch, right? Like that is a big number, and it has huge impacts on this program, and they're going to have to find a way to make up for it in the long term. but Josh was talking about 40, 50 million back when this all started, thinking they might not play a football season. That played a big role, getting those media rights dollars, though it was down the conference payout by 10 million this year, he said. Obviously the loss in revenue of everything that they went through of not having fans. What did he say today? They had 4,000 fans, none paid. Usually last year they had 583,000 fans in the same amount of athletic events. So it's just unbelievable. But they had a lot of cost savings measures, all of that. But that's a big number. But I was expecting a bigger number. And even Josh was saying, hey, this was a little bit better than I thought it was going to be.
I think it was better than a lot of people. And my mind goes to like, man, what about those SEC schools that kind of skirted a little bit of some what we knew as normal? But for people wondering, okay, because when he said that, I thought, okay, lower than I thought. Well, what's it mean? Like, what does 12 to 18 million mean? And he hopes that some of that will go down as they get to the end of the fiscal year, which is June 30th. 14 days. I'm kind of wondering like how much that can really change, but I am not in finance for a reason. But so how do they pay that? Like, how do they begin to climb out of this? Basically, it's how quickly, as I understand it, the university expects them to pay this back.
Yeah.
Right. So if they say we want, a lot in a short amount of time, then there's going to be ways to pull the levers and adjust that. Now, if they allow it to spread it out, then you can maybe maintain a sense of normalcy without making more cost-saving measures. But
yeah, because basically what's happened, the university is loaning
correct
the athletic department money so they can float this, they can get through this year, but they're still going to have, it sounds like they're going to have, cost saving measures in. And that's why it's also important. I think why he made the move for football, he had to get as many fans in there as possible. He has to make as much revenue as possible. And that basketball program is making it, right? When this year, I think there's gonna be a lot of sellouts, and that's going to help him a lot. Football, he might have close to a sellout. With Brett Bielema there, Bielema building up success, a lot of hopes. It was expensive to get him. It was expensive, not as expensive as, most buyouts at this point, but it's expensive to fire an entire football staff and then to hire an entire new one and give them the resources that Josh Whitman has. But I think that's important. But also, they've cut some jobs. They've bought out some people. They've, not hired and they're not going to fill some of those vacancies that they've had. So they've had to trim around the edges a little bit. They had to take a lot of pay cuts that saved them $1 million last year. So they're probably going to have to continue doing that stuff the next couple of years. But if football and basketball, bring in fans like they can bring in fans, maybe they can make up for it a little quicker.
I thought somebody asked Brett or asked Josh a question. I mean, look, we saw programs across the country cut, right? Universities cut programs. And someone said, Josh, was that on the table for you? And I thought Josh, this may have been one of the most telling answers of the day, which was really full of telling answers. He said, look, if any, because they didn't cut anything. They didn't come close to cutting anything. But Josh said, look, if an athletic director tells you they didn't put every single option on the table in those dark days of May 2020, June 2020, as you tried to figure out a way where you don't even know if there's going to be a fall season, they'd be lying. You have to address everything. So yes, 12 to 18 is a lot. It's less than 40, but it didn't come at the expense of some of these programs. And he said Illinois doesn't have as many programs as some of the other Big Ten institutions. But the fact that they did not do that is quite the, I don't want to say feat, but it is fairly impressive that they were able to not cut anything and also only lose 12 to 18 million.
All right, so we covered the COVID aspect of this, and one of the big stories, and we wrote it right away just so fans could calm down, about Illinois basketball and their third assistant. When we come back, Joey, I want to ask you what you thought the next biggest thing to come out of Josh Whitman's media roundtable, 2 hours with us media. We'll talk about that next on the Illini Inquirer podcast. All right, Joey, can we say on the count of 3, 1, 2, 3, say it, what we thought the next biggest story was? Are you ready?
Yeah, let's rock.
Okay. 1, 2, 3.
Gambling.
Oh, there you go. All right, you take it. Gambling.
I just thought, look, And I'll say, I mean, we've seen a little bit of this. Josh has taken a little bit of heat. He's like, this isn't something I'm down for. The gambling on college athletics in college athletics or within the state, right? So people in Illinois can't gamble on Illinois, and Josh is for that. And look, you can agree or disagree with him. Frankly, I don't entirely know. I'm not a gambler, so I'm like, I don't care. It doesn't matter to me. Like, I don't have any profound opinion on this. I know a lot of people do, but his logic, if you follow it, I thought he was very forthright instead of just being like, nope, sorry, I'm just not here for it. He was probably spoke the most passionately about gambling. And he circled it back to a few things. One, he said, and again, I'm not advocating for what he said, but this is what he said. He
Yeah.
said, look,
Just to whiteboard this a little bit. Whitman has been the face of athletic directors in the state, telling the Illinois legislature, right, we don't want people to be able to bet on in-state college football games inside the borders, right? And a lot of gambling proponents, understandably, don't like that because, like, well, they can do this in Indiana, they can do it in Wisconsin, they can do it online, they can go to a bookie. It's going to happen regardless. Yeah, Josh Whitman has quite an unpopular take, I would say, on this of not allowing people to gamble, which is illegal now at certain areas, or a points bet app or whatever you do if you register in person. Again, I'm not a huge gambler either. I don't bet on sports, but I know it can drive a lot of interest. And I know it can drive even some revenue into the game if it drives interest into your game, which could help media rights and all of that, right? So, but he has been the face of that, like in Springfield. He's been in those legislature meetings, like being the advocate for all Division I athletics. I just wanted to write that.
And he said, and I don't have access to the other 13 athletic directors in the state, but he said this is what they all think too. Like, he's not alone in this fight. So just to put that out there, but his logic is in the NBA and the NFL as a professional athlete, you can make yourself a little insulated, right? And you have enough people where you can have security and you don't have an upset gambler with you. With it's harder for access. And Josh's stance is it's harder to create that bubble for college kids. And we've talked about bubbles for 12 months, but it's harder to do that. And he said you have people betting who are betting on kids who, and he pointed out kids. I mean, that was a point of his speech here about this. He said these kids can't even gamble. Like, they can't do this legally, but you're putting money on them to gamble legally. And he tied that into what's really, I don't know that, I mean, the tie makes sense, but I think it's a different bear itself, that the social media rhetoric directed towards athletes and how all of that kind of plays in. I don't, like I said, I don't gamble, but his stance was pretty passionate. I think that's what he spoke most passionately about today, in my opinion.
Yeah. So this was one of the major topics I wanted to ask him about because I know his stance. I don't know why his stance is that way. I've known the theoreticals he's put out, but I also kind of want to know why he thinks this. Like, is there something that shaped his experience and why he doesn't think gambling would be this big problem anyway? Because people are gambling on in-state college games anyway, right? So why not get that revenue for your state, right? If you want this state to gain more revenue, which certainly this state could use it, and maybe it can drive, some attention to Illinois football, right? Maybe somebody will watch an Illinois football game that wouldn't because they're gambling on it. A lot of people I know have to gamble or enjoy sports more because they gamble. I don't. It just drives me insane. I hate losing money, even if it's $5, $10. I just don't like it. I like the idea of like, oh, odds. That's a good bet. And maybe I'll do that every once in a while. If I go to Vegas, put like a long-term bet. I don't like going to Vegas and gambling. It's just, I don't enjoy that with my money. But I asked him, like, what shaped that? Is there something like in your past? It is theoretical to him, but he believes he has an obligation as an athletic director to do everything to shield his student athletes from any harm. And he thinks opening up gambling in-state, legalized gambling on in-state college games, whether it's real or not, it seems more theoretical to me, but philosophically, he just believes he can't do that. as an athletic director, that opening up gambling and having, these student athletes on an open campus, for gamblers to go there, find that person, whatever, try to influence that person or message them on social media, is harmful. He thinks it's really harmful, and it's just something he doesn't want to support. He understands, and I followed up with him about, does it not bother you about, legalized online gambling? That's happening anyway. So like, is it really that much bigger of a deal? He said, listen, I know this is unpopular, but this is just how I philosophically believe that my job is to do. So it's a really interesting, it's nuanced. I think he was very forthright about how he feels that way, and knowing it's not probably the popular thing to say for a guy who usually is pretty on the popular side of things and says things that, people agree with. But this is one that I know he's not on the popular side. And I talked with our guy, Brad Evans, who's a huge Illinois fan and huge into gambling, and sports gambling and all that. And he said he's not going to be on the right side of this. So it'll be very interesting to see how long this can last. Cause see, this is where I should be more of an expert on this, but I believe they're making a little change to that. So I'll look that up here right now, Joey, but I do think they're making a little change to gambling that he wasn't very happy about.
Yeah. I also found, Jeremy, the geography of just the location. Look, Illinois, University of Illinois is, when you're talking gambling on college athletics in the state of Illinois, no slight to any other program, but you're probably looking at Illinois and Northwestern, right? The big Power 5 institutions. And if you look, and this obviously doesn't play, but geographically where Illinois is located, if you're a fan in Danville, you drive like 10 minutes and you can put in.
Here you go. They just passed in the legislature. You can bet on in-state college games in person at a casino, racetrack, or OTB. So you can do those in person. You can't do it on your PointsBet app or whatever it is.
I don't understand the difference then.
Well, you can just do it from your home if you're just on your PointsBet app.
Sure, I get that, but like if you can.
Well, that's what Josh isn't a fan of this. Like Josh isn't a fan of the change that they just.
But to me, you open one, you may open up.
I think this is a step towards that, right?
Sure, and look, Josh isn't going to like it, and we'll see the validity of how many of these other. And I don't think he was lying, but we'll see what this looks like. I just thought it was interesting. I thought. Honestly, Jeremy, I don't know. Like, I dabbled around with gambling like 5 years. And when I say that, I mean, like, I put like $5 on the, just like, oh, that'd pay out 50 if it happens. And
what was the sports side? It was when I was in college. So you were probably, in college, it was probably popular, but it was like penny bets. It was like 10-cent bets for people who didn't want to like go in the deep end, but wanted a little play. So it was like, you'd put $1 bet on something or 10 cents on this just to make it more interesting. I forget what that site was called. I'll have to call it my college boys.
I don't know when it took off. Like this is literally what we do for a living. And then all of a sudden one day I'm just like, holy crap. This is everywhere. Like the spreads are on ESPN and it's just all over. And I'm probably ignorant. Someone who's a big gambler is going to be, this has been happening. Like, I'm sure it has, but it just really feels like over the course of the last, maybe the pandemic, like gassed it more, right? Like people are at home. I don't know, but like, it just feels like it's like, oh, this is seriously a very large topic of conversation. And I'm probably ignorant, but it just like happened.
Yeah. When you got leagues embracing it now, right? The professional leagues.
Yeah.
And college hasn't, and I wonder if they will in 10 years, right? I wonder if they do in 10 years, but I can at least now understand why Josh feels that way. I don't know if a lot of people will agree with how he feels that way, or if it's any different than what's going on right now. Okay, I said hockey because I actually didn't have to ask the question. I waited to ask my gambling questions, but hockey was on my list, of course, and I thought he was going to address it in his opening statement, but I think it's a topic, Josh, we've always had to prod him with ever since he did kind of like open this up. And I joke with him every time, Josh, you know what I'm going to ask? Because everyone's excited when he announced this hockey project. And right before the pandemic, Joey, we were hearing, and Josh confirmed that today, they were in the 10 inside the 10-yard line to finish this. I forgot what analogy he used today.
Somewhere in the red zone. I mean, red zone has come up. Yeah.
Yeah. He said, we were about to green light this project, which would have been at that time $100 million project that would house hockey, a new Division I men's hockey program, the volleyball program, wrestling, and both gymnastics program. It would solve all those issues. Downtown businesses were in on this, developers were in on it. The university obviously had a little play in this too. So everybody was on board, and then the pandemic happened, and Josh said they just wanted to take a break from that. Everyone had COVID to deal with and figure that out. And today, he said they're just starting to restart that process of engaging all the partners who are involved in this, including the athletics department. Said they've had a few emails back and forth, and they'll need financial clarity out of all of this. And I imagine this is a project that will be very hard to do while they are indebted to the university and as they're trying to make this money up. But he's already talked about doing a wrestling, right, venue by itself, potentially doing a gymnastics venue by itself. And he didn't sound very bullish today, right? He said, we got to figure out if this is even feasible. But he said, we've walked so far down the road that I'm obligated. We can't just walk away from it. So I don't think hockey sounds that promising, at least today. Maybe a year, we're in a different place. And Josh Whitman says, hey, everybody's on board again. Everybody's ready to go. Let's go do this. But he did not set high expectations today, when a year ago, if COVID didn't happen, I think he was ready to announce the program.
Sure, yeah, and I think he had financial commitments from people, handshake agreements. Essentially, this gets going, we'll take, but intentionally did not take money because I don't want to say it didn't always feel like a pipe dream, but to me, that was kind of telling, if you didn't take money for this, it's smart. It turned out to be a very smart decision to not. So it's not like they have nothing, but to get this going again, which I like, he said it's getting the band back together, which is one of my favorite analogies for anything. But basically it's like, okay, these were people who had financially committed previously. So let's start to get back out there, see where they are, see where we are, if we can get this thing going again. I don't know how bullish I am. Maybe, right. I think I don't know the financial status of the people who had committed, verbal agreements to give money. Maybe they're hurting more than others. We don't know that, right? But
I would imagine if they had that much money, they might even have more money after the pandemic.
Yeah, heck, and we could be on the way other side of this. But I don't know. I mean, I am a little surprised he didn't bring it up in his opening statement, because he knew it happened, and then it was like a tidal wave. He was like, I was waiting for this, and
he probably got to ask more questions in his hour of question taking about hockey than anything.
Yeah, so I don't know. I mean, I think he's right. I mean, you don't get as far as they allegedly got, and we don't know. There's no point where it's like they got to this. We don't know that. I mean, I'm sure there is that point, but I don't know what it is. So you don't get that far to turn around and say, hey, yeah, what a fun run. Boy, all that work we put in and all of these plans we designed and all that. Yeah, sorry we lost it. I mean, that's just not how this thing works. It may turn out they're like, hey, nope. We don't have this money. That's really what it comes down to. The interest obviously is still there. Josh believes this could be a third revenue sport, which was an interesting line to me, because that's a bold line. That's frankly a pretty bold line to draw. So I don't know, man. I think there's hope. Obviously, if he can get the finances together, I think he would, he'd hit the gas on this thing and make it happen. But we just don't know the status, or really, Jeremy, we don't know how many people were involved, right? Was this 20 people, and you've got to hope all 20 dominoes line up the same way, or was it 3 or 4? Because that's an easier thing to navigate. We just don't know.
Yeah, has anything changed for the developers? Anything changed for Champaign, right? The city of Champaign, all of that. So he just didn't sound as bullish today. He didn't set high expectations, would be my answer to anybody who asked about it. If you would ask me a year ago or a year and 2 months ago, I would have said, man, there's like a 99% chance of this happening. Now I don't even know what that percentage would be, but it'd be far lower. It'd be far lower. And even Josh said, he said something along the lines of I feel obligated to relook at it, but I don't feel obligated to do it. So I thought that was an interesting way of saying that. All right. I thought the other big thing was kind of the big picture, the macro of NCAA athletics. Josh called this the most consequential year for college athletics in modern history. And I don't disagree with him. Think about what we have coming down the pipe. And I know for a lot of people, the one-time transfer rule and name, image, and likeness, those are monster changes to college athletics that Josh talked about. But he continues, and he's been saying this for a while. And, I've tried to do some updates on this in the past, but I think he's right when he talks about the Alston versus NCAA case in the Supreme Court, which is basically the NCAA on trial, right? And what does the Supreme Court think of the NCAA's model? Is this, taking advantage of student athletes? Like, is this almost like a monopoly, basically, the NCAA? That they are going to decide on this soon. They've already heard oral arguments for this. So they could decide this at any point, and this could completely change the NCAA model. And Josh said, people aren't talking about this. Like, people are talking about it, but not enough. Like, this is a bigger deal than even name, image, and likeness. But Josh said name, image, and likeness is the biggest change to college athletics that he's seen in modern history. And then you could have the Alston case on top of that. Then you have the one-time transfer rule, which we know has changed the landscape of college athletics. Josh thinks that could change eventually. That maybe some kids who enter the transfer portal, and we've seen a few of them, Joey, it's not as good as you think because there's only so many spots. There's only so many scholarships at these places. So I agree with him. This is a year that has changed college athletics, and that's even without COVID.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that was going to be a lot of the conversation walking into this, right? And I'll be honest, I don't know a ton about the Alston case. I guess I don't know enough where I would feel comfortable trying to lay out the exact lines of thinking, but it truly is a huge deal. And name, image, likeness, like it's weird, Jeremy, because I mean, Josh has kind of been,
Well,
you know,
I'll just give you Axios is one of my favorite websites, and they give good, quick breakdowns. And here's what I'll tell you. They wrote the Ninth Circuit last year sided with former West Virginia running back Sean Alston in his antitrust case against the NCAA, ruling that schools can provide unlimited academic-related expenses to their athletes. If SCOTUS upholds the decision, it could open the door for a pay-for-play system in which schools compete for talent by shelling out thousands under the legal guise of education benefits. So student athlete compensation has been top of mind for years, but the glacial pace which that's progressed continues to frustrate them. That's from Axios. Says, in theory, the NCAA isn't against finding ways to secure compensation for its athletes as long as there are proper guardrails in place to ensure it maintains the aura of amateurism, which is all the NCAA is about, is the aura of amateurism. I think we all know.
What a cute thing. It's all of this, right? That name, image, likeness, this is all happening like at the same time as you're coming out of a pandemic, as you're welcoming in this transfer portal. And like, this is real. Like we look at this offseason micro, like, boy, this is a crazy offseason for, Illinois basketball or football or whatever the case may be. But zoom out a little bit and the horizons are changing. I think that's why you're seeing some longtime coaches like, that is a bear I'm not trying to fight anymore here. Like, there's just so much happening. And name, image, likeness, Jeremy, we like, to me,
there's just not as much control anymore, right? Like if you're Mike Krzyzewski, it's just the control it's no longer you, man. Like you got to, and I think Brad is obviously struggling with that as well. I think a lot of coaches are struggling with that at all, but who's going to adapt to it? Who's going to adapt? And I think it's one thing Brett Bielema has done really well. I mean, this is a guy who obviously had control at Wisconsin and Arkansas. And you could think of as kind of this old school guy, right? He's embraced all this and said, hey, these are the rules. I got to find a way to succeed with.
He came back for like knowing this.
Yeah.
He could have stayed in the NFL, got himself a nice paycheck and worked his way up to whatever, the ceiling is for him in that league. But he came back to this. So name, image, likeness is a big deal, especially here in the state of Illinois, because like July 1st, this party's moving, man. Like this is happening. And like it or not, I don't even understand why you wouldn't like it at this point. Like you literally don't have to do anything. Kids can make money for going on the radio and saying I'm Io DeSumo and I support X business or whatever. It doesn't cost you anything, doesn't hurt your ears. So, I mean, this is coming in. And one of my questions, one, I think there's so much that goes into this. I mean, you talk from the social media, how do you brand athletes? What so many things move on to how many people are monitoring, who you are doing these endorsements for. What are they? Social media endorsements? Are they local? So many of those things. And then we've waited for the NCAA. And I feel like this is, and people I've talked with, which not a ton, but enough where I would feel comfortable. Like, man, we gave you guys the chance to do something here.
Josh Whitman said they give him 12 to 18 months, whether it's the NCAA or the federal government. And we know how U.S. Congress is operating right now. It's hard for anything to get done. Like, they haven't provided a solution. More importantly, the NCAA has just sat on its hands with this, hoping Congress would bail them out with this. And then some states have said, okay, we're giving you a deadline. And Illinois joined in on that. Cam Buckner was a part of that. And Josh Whitman said, we thank them. They at least gave us in state some like, very thorough rules of what can and can't do. But Illinois can do that and other states around them can't. So maybe they can benefit from this in the short term. But it's crazy that we're sitting there on July 1st and Illinois has no idea exactly what's going to happen. Or the compliance, like, what does the compliance office do? Like, how do they handle this?
Do you plan for the state law because that's what is coming? Yeah. Or do you slow play that and think, okay, there's going to be some sort of you don't know. And then I wondered, like
if you're Andre Curbelo on July 1st, do you have something lined up? Like,
if I'm Andre Curbelo on July 1st, I'm making sure, one, I'm staying in campus if workouts aren't still going on, and I am just tour-a-day champagne and offering my voice to whoever wants it. But I thought, like, okay, if the NCAA has no plan here, and look, there's still kind of a lot of ball game left until July 1st. Strangely enough, it was going to be another board of directors meeting. Maybe something will come out of that. But will they say, like, no, sorry, because we don't have it? And I asked Josh, I said, well, they, because Illinois can do whatever they want, but if the NCAA were to come in and say, no, sorry, you're not eligible because you've accepted money, well, it doesn't really matter what the law is because you're not going to be playing. And Josh said, no. And that lines up with what I've heard. Like, the NCAA is, they're not passing anything, but they're not getting in the way of anything either. And that is a big deal. And that is how these states that have passed it, and they are growing, Jeremy, the number of states that are jumping on board with this, they're not slowing down. That's why there is, for whatever window it is, and maybe there isn't a window, maybe the NCAA and the federal government figure this thing out before July 1st, but if there's a window from July 1st to September 1st, well, I mean, that's just so an ambiguous number out, or an arbitrary number out there. That's 2 months of, like, whatever states are doing this, that is an inherent advantage to them. And good for Illinois for jumping on board, because I don't think it's literally like the least you could do for a college athlete at this point. So that is so interesting. And it's just a backdrop of, to circle back, this off season of really reevaluating what the NCAA is.
Right. And it's going to be interesting. I think there's going to be, for people that, like, me, I'm in favor of name, image, and likeness. I'm in favor of the one-time transfer rule, but there are adjustments and there could be unintended consequences that do have a negative impact on college athletics, right? I think in the overall scheme of things, it will have a positive, but it's going to change. And I think for some coaches, that's going to be really hard because there's less power maybe in some of their hands. But maybe that's a good thing for the long term of the sport. But we'll see where it goes from here. He also addressed college football expansion, not for that long. He said philosophically it makes sense, and I think everybody would agree. Most people would agree with that. Increased access. A school like Illinois can at least dream of it if they're ever right. Like in the Big Ten West Championship, like if they make a Big Ten title game, they have a chance. Right? Like if they have that 1 year where they win 9 or 10 games, you have a chance to crack that and at least have the idea or hope that you're competing for an NCAA championship. And I think that's what makes a lot of these tournaments, whether it's the playoffs in professional sports or, the tournaments in the NCAA, what makes them so much fun is so many teams can have at least the hope that they can make it that far. But he did say there's got to be a long list of concerns and issues before they agree on a certain one. So I would say he was in favor of it, but he wants more information. But
yeah,
nothing ridiculous, I thought.
Yeah. Also, though, I mean, to me, some of the long list is like logistically, how does this look in terms? And maybe, look, Josh is a far smarter individual than I am, so I'm sure there's just something I'm missing. But I wish I had gone back and followed up on what some of his concerns, not even concerns, because that makes it sound like he's not in favor, but what some of his questions were regarding it. But
yeah, I think that's a good follow-up for Big Ten Media Day. Like, he's usually there. Like that's a good month from now when they probably have decided what they're going to do. But felt like there were so many other bigger issues that, hey, we got his opinion. Let's move on from that one. Anything else big, Joe? I mean, obviously he touched on the programs. He called Mike Small the best golf coach in the country. Basketball, he gave all the plaudits to that. I do want to say he made a comment about Ayo Dosunmu and Kofi that certainly made it seem like Kofi is gone. And he said their jerseys will be in the rafters at some point. But he said, I appreciate everything they've given for this program. And, Kofi reportedly is going to stick in, and Kofi retweeted one of them. It's just, there's not been the exact, clear, hey, I'm gone. Which I wish someone would just do at this point. But it certainly seems like they are gone. And Josh did say, yeah, this was a weird offseason, way more turnover than we wanted or expected, but some of that was bad luck with Stephen Gentry going to his alma mater, Orlando going back to Kentucky, both those programs needing an assistant. So he mentioned that, but he said he's got full faith in Brad Underwood. I thought Scott Ritchie asked a great question about contract extension, because I thought that would have been done in April. But with the assistant thing, he said that's prolonged that, but Josh seems pretty comfortable that they will extend Brad. They extended Brad last year, right? Gave him a big bump and extended years. But usually you have best season ever, they're going to extend you again.
Can we talk about Kofi real quick? I mean, I know it's a topic of conversation this morning, right? We can't say Kofi is 100% gone. Do I think that? I lean there, yeah. I mean, I'm able to follow arrows that are put in front of me. But Kofi has not come out and said, I am not returning to school. No one has.
Right? He hasn't just, I am not returning. Ayo Dosunmu is no longer in the Illinois roster. He has made it clear he is gone. Georgie Bashangashvili has made it clear he is gone. Kofi said the goodbye, but everybody does that when they enter.
Did that last year.
Yeah, everybody does that when they enter the draft. The player's trunk thing certainly seems to be he is going to be gone.
I agree. And I want to touch on that because this ties into exactly what we were talking about with name, image, likeness. I think if Kofi elected to come back and they said, well, you sold your stuff on Players Trunk, he could turn around and say, that was 3 weeks before you guys passed this, so I could do that. I could have done this legally. Could there be a waiver? I don't know. I mean, I don't know that but I could see where they would say, yeah, this is kind of a weird gray summer here. But
most likely he's gone. It's just he hasn't clearly made it.
But until he says it, until he picks up the phone and calls us or tweets it.
Or Illinois takes him off the roster.
Yes. It's just hard for now we can provide all the context. And yeah, we do think he's gone. That I mean, again, it all lines up, but it's just hard for us as reporters to put our fist down and say he is not coming back, because people listen to us and expect the right information. And maybe that is the right information, but you cannot guess it.
Well, it's totally a social media age. It's hey, we got to look on retweets and all that stuff and Players Trunk. And that's, it's yeah, those are all signs that he's likely gone.
And really, we've addressed those, and reporters who cover Illinois have addressed those. He retweeted this, and that's as far, and that makes us feel more comfortable.
But he didn't say, I am gone, thank you, Illinois.
No. When that happens, or when he is selected in the NBA draft, I will know. But
or Illinois, give us a statement, just give us a release. That'd be.
It's all semantics, right? I mean, it's just kind of how things have to work on our end, so we aren't poor reporters.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my rant.
I want to wrap up with this, Joey. I just think Whitman is so good at this. At this, we haven't talked to him in 7 months, basically. Right. You talked to him for a track story, but it was understood. I'm just asking about the opening of Demergent Park, which was a big deal for them. We talked to him when Mike Paletta was the new wrestling coach, but it was just wrestling. This and even we talked to him 7 months ago, it was about Brett Bielema getting hired. And that was the focus, right? Was the football program. This was a year's worth of stuff in this year. And while sitting through 58 minutes of an introductory press conference doesn't sound like all that exciting, he gave so much information, was very forthright. And I've said this before, I think he's a really good athletic director. I think he's Illinois at the time took a little bit of a gamble on a 37-year-old, right, who had been at a Division III school, but he is incredibly bright. He has a vision for what the future is. I mean, you might not agree with everything with him, but I mean, everyone you talk to in the athletics department, whether they've been there for decades or been there a year or two, they think that guy, like, he is a born leader. And you can tell by how much he talked about today, Joey, and looking at his notes, like he had copious notes as a lawyer would. He is organized, and he is very good at the media part of it. He is very good at the messaging part of his program. And I thought that came through again today. He has answers. He doesn't stammer with it. He's confident in it. And I thought a lot of them were satisfactory answers.
Yeah, and I mean, again, the 58-minute opening. That what I think I appreciate about these, Jeremy, is like we went in. You've written. I mean, you wrote this morning. This is what I want to ask about. Bob Osmondson, the News Gazette, did a very similar thing with 10. Josh, I mean, it's not like you got to prod and pull, and there's a big sigh where it's like, oh man, I think, geez, I thought this might come up, and now it is.
With the finance thing, it's like, am I going to have to FOIA all this?
Right.
Are we going to have to, like, some athletic directors might make you do that. And, eventually that information is going to be out there. And I think Josh knows that. So we might as well provide it to people. And I think this is his state of the union, right? This is his state of the program. And while Illinois does not want this whole thing to be posted or transcripted, I think he knows it's important for the hundreds of thousands of Illini fans, or a million or whatever it is, that they know what's going on in the program, and they know the direction of the program. And he usually provides a pretty good direction.
There's two things quickly, if I could, that I want to touch on, because we just talked about how they're expecting $12 to $18 million, financial loss from this. But when I pulled up, I saw the baseball come up. Ubben is surrounded by a pile of that's donations. I mean, and I will say, when Josh started talking about revenue and bouncing, I'm like, oh, buddy, this is just that. This isn't. You're gonna have to dumb this down for me if you could. And he did. The money, the donations basically go in to, we'll just say, a bank account, for a lack of better terms. When a bill comes up, like on Ubben, we've completed this project, we were tasked, they withdraw and they pay, and that's how it goes. So it isn't like they've got a bank account of all the Ubben expenses sitting there. And,
right. They're different funds is basically what you're saying. Sure, so like the revenue they lost was because they didn't have people in the stands.
Right.
Right. And they lost some money on the licensing, the advertising, the media rights, all of that stuff. They lost money that they usually get from that. But they are doing all these projects still, whether it's Ubben or baseball or softball, because they have donations that have to go to that. Right. So do you just put it off, or just continue with the project, get those donations still, and maybe put the gas on the pedal coming out of the pandemic. Right. So maybe it provides you a competitive advantage when you come out, but there really probably isn't much of a reason to stop that, because those funds are there. You cannot take those funds to pay for this employee, right, or to pay for this loss of scholarship money. And scholarship money, I should say, is all fundraised too, but or to pay for this bill, right? I can't do that. Like, that's not how this whole thing works. It's not just one big athletics department fund, and this donation of 1 million can go to whatever I want. No, it's what that person who donated wants.
It's two separate funds at least. Athletics here, the other funds are here. I will say, I thought the donor funded super senior thing was really unexpected to me. I did not know that was a thing.
Yeah. So all the scholarships that they are doing for super seniors, all the additional spring athletes, which he said was $400,000, and the fall and winter, which he said is 1 million to 1.5 million additional scholarship funds. He said that's all been raised through donations from the I Fund. And Howard Milton, his team, who's the head fundraiser at Illinois, those people have done unbelievable work.
Yeah, I just thought those two things were interesting, and I feel like we needed to put some context over the fact that they are losing, or did lose money. But yeah, if you drive to campus, or if you go to a football game, you're going to see buildings popping up and dirt being moved, and that's why. And look, they're not going to have the same. For 3 years, they had more than $40 million in donations. Now Josh would be happy to exceed 30. And obviously, right, the pandemic was financially not great for a lot of people. So that's where some of that comes. I just thought it was informative, man. And I know a lot of athletic directors make themselves available to the media, whether it be in a more of a formal setting like this, which was still fairly informal. I mean, in the sense that you're talking to an athletic director. Uh, I just I like that Josh does it. I think it's a good way and a good time in the calendar year to recap. And he did spend a little time. We didn't talk about it, but he did spend a little time talking about his impressions of Brett Bielema. And if you're going to get out of some debt, Packer Memorial Stadium would be a good way to do that. You talked about that. Brett is doing a good job. Josh said he's exceeded some of the expectations that he had for Brett. I don't know exactly what the bar was, but I mean, certainly it was high enough that you hire the guy and you pay him the salary and you put the coaching staff together. But I just enjoyed this time and a chance to talk with him, and he doesn't hide it from what we know, right? I mean, maybe it's just there's so much and there's something that doesn't get discussed.
Well, I'm just thinking of like some of the other athletic directors I hear from, and like Sandy Barber at Penn State is really good. But there were sometimes like during the pandemic and we're figuring all this stuff out, kind of put a foot in the mouth sometimes. Like Gene Smith at Ohio State, like sometimes these are really bright, good athletic directors, and sometimes they stick their foot in their mouth. Like Josh has a clear message. He spends a lot of time, I think, in developing that message, and he's obviously a very good writer, and then he can deliver it very well. So obviously, he's really helped the basketball program here. He's helped the facilities here. He's helped the fundraising here. Now, if he can turn around football, did Gabby, our intern Gabby Heidick, asked about women's basketball, and Josh said, "Man, like figuring out women's basketball here is really difficult." But he sounds committed to Nancy Faye, despite a 6-64 Big Ten record, and a lot of transfers, all of that. So that question was answered, and he doesn't sound like that's going to be a, hey, show me what you got this 1 year. It sounds like he's going to be committed to her for a while, which I don't know how many people are like angry about that, because the women's basketball program just has been bad for a long time through many coaches. Like Teresa Grentz was really the last one to have a lot of success here. I think Jolette got to an NIT Final Four in her first year, and then just went down from there. And we know what happened under Matt Bolon, who was a really good coach. Nancy Faye's a Hall of Fame coach, and they've struggled at this job. So I don't know what the answer is. He doesn't even know exactly what the answers are to fix that program, but he thinks Nancy Faye can still find it.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. And I didn't really I didn't get the sense candidly before. I mean, I think Josh didn't give the sense that Lovey was in real trouble either. Right. I mean, just to be fair, I don't think I expected Josh to sit there and be like, it's got to be the year. This has got to be the. No, he did.
He's going to be one. He's going to be an athletic director, unlike his predecessor, who supports his coach until the day he can.
Yeah, and that's exactly almost verbatim what he said in the Zoom presser when he fired Lovey. Is you're there as long as you can be there, and you're there 100% until you can't be. And so, we'll see. Obviously, there's a little different set of eyes and expectations on football versus women's basketball in terms of, revenue and all of that. But just enjoyed it. And I thought it was a great series of questions by Gabby to get that, because I was going to jump in and ask, I'm like, someone's got to bring this up, because this has been kind of a rough go of it for Nancy. And yeah, Josh sounds committed. So we'll see. Informative. And man, we still got a Thursday here to do some football stuff.
Yeah, it was kind of a slow week or two around here, and it certainly won't be. We got a football recruiting event that we got a basketball recruiting event down in Normal this weekend, and more football camps and official visits and all of it. So let's get back to work at 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night. Joey, how's that sound?
Oh, I just tried that new Celsius, and it's new to me. Is that Celsius? So I don't know, man.
And you talked to our boy Dylan Meyer, right?
I did, yeah. I actually am about ready to put that story in the system. Can we talk?
Can't wait to read it. Dylan Meyer is one of my dude. He's a political junkie, and some people agree with him, some people won't agree with him, but he is one of the most fascinating people I've covered, and one of the most enjoyable people I've covered.
First time talking to him, and he was great. I mean, we didn't dive too deep. The dude's playing in the U.S. Open. 4 years ago, he was a Big Ten Golfer of the Year, which sounds like a long time, but like golf coming up life, that's not that long. And this is his second U.S. Open. He finished 20th in 2018, 20th. Good for him, man. I mean, that's probably one of the stupidest questions. Like, how do you not get starstruck? Like, dude, I sit on the couch Thursday through Sunday, and I'm like, oh shoot, this is awesome. And then I'm
I
like,
asked Nick Hardy the same question a couple of weeks ago, man. So don't feel bad about it. I go, like, is it still, are you still starstruck when you see like, Tiger Woods or Phil or yeah.
It's all that's good for him. And he has said, he's talked with Mike Small a little bit. And frankly, Jeremy, it's hard for us. Like Mike talks a lot about the mental aspect of golf. Like that's something that really means a lot to him. And at first, when I'd really known Mike and tell this, I'm like, okay, yeah, right. Like that seems nice. But then when you talk to Dylan, he's like, yeah, we learned how to do all of this before we had to do all of this. Like this is a real thing. Now there are adjustments. How do you approach the week? It's a different bear, obviously, in one of the 4 majors. It's just cool, man. Good for him. It's a fun story. It's good for Illinois. There's two Illini.
Yeah.
So it's fun, man. It's a good time. It's nice to be back to normal. It's just so nice to see people in person again and to
shake hands,
to go to a football thing. Brett talked about us maybe running some 40s. I don't anticipate I'll be doing that.
I don't think they'll do that. I think they would have to sign multiple waivers. And I don't know how many of us would do that.
I am very out of shape.
I'd run the 40. What do you think I'd run it in? What do you think you'd run it in? I think I think in high school I was like a 5'3" guy. I bet I'm still there. I bet I could still do a 5.
Are you kidding me? You're running a
5'4", maybe 5'4". Like I run. I just don't run sprints. So
there's dad's strength, but is there dad's speed?
I don't know if speed's ever been my thing. So I think I could crack under 5'5".
I'm not kidding. I'm about 7 seconds. I have to imagine.
You can't beat Rich Eisen. Rich Eisen's a 6 guy.
Yeah, no way. I'm not doing it. I don't even know. At the end of that, just what a terrible disaster I would be at the end of that 40. But honestly, how fun. You're right.
You going to bench it? You going to go bench?
No. Why would I do that? I'd rather run the
5 on there, see how many you can rep out.
0. I'd rather run the 40. It'd be fun, man. It's just exciting to talk about this again. And Big Ten Media Days is around the corner.
Yeah.
Quicker than I thought, actually. There's just life is coming back, man.
Nice.
It's really fun.
All right, Joey. Thank you, man.
All right, man.